Fake news decide an election. If you think that's a recent problem, think again. Mark Antony might be remembered as a Roman emperor rather than Cleopatra's lover if it wasn't for a malicious disinformation campaign launched by his rival. Did you know that disinformation is not an invention of the 21st century? According to legend, back in the Roman Empire, Octavian carried out what may have been the first disinformation campaign against Mark Antony, his rival. After the death of Julius Caesar, the two men competed to succeed him. Octavian was his adoptive son, but Antony was his most trusted general. Antony, though, was in Egypt, pursuing Cleopatra. They say Octavian made mint coins with little phrases written on the back to damage the image of Antony, something like the 1st century BC equivalent of malicious tweets. It is also said that he purported to discover Antony's will, reading it out loud from the Senate, stating that Antony had given himself wholly to Cleopatra and wanted to be buried in Egypt rather than Rome, to the astonishment and disgust of the Romans. As if this was not enough, the fake document announced that the true heir to the Roman Empire was Julius Caesar's son with Cleopatra, neither Octavian nor Antony. Octavian eventually became emperor, and Antony was denounced as a traitor to the Roman Empire, remembered mainly for his love of Cleopatra rather than his many other achievements. A persuasive discourse can help change the perception of reality. It is stronger if it appeals to emotions, as did Octavian when he claimed that Antony wanted to be buried in Egypt. How did fake news spread back in the day? If there is one thing that characterizes the history of disinformation, it is reach. Before the printing press, relatively few people were able to read and write. The dissemination of information was mostly oral, like Octavian reading out Antony's fake will. In Europe, the Age of Enlightenment saw the rise of the literacy rate. The printing press, invented during the 50th century, allowed for the dissemination of books. And during the Industrial Age, states invested in public education, such as the literacy rate in Europe was close to 100%, well before the internet broke through the mid-1990s. Before the internet, information was mostly consumed through newspapers and television. The infamous American writer Edgar Allen Poe was certainly one guy who knew how to create convincing false stories. In 1844, he published an article for The Sun newspaper in New York, in which he claimed that a hot air balloon had crossed the Atlantic Ocean in just 3 days. It took actually 4 days to discover that the story was not true. Why so long? Poe used astonishing scientific details to narrate the piece. It seemed real and exploited a gap in the audience knowledge. Knowledge in the form of information is power, and those who control it have the power to shape reality. Some of the techniques used in today's campaigns are not at all new. Disinformation is as old as history. The problem today is that globalization and the internet allow campaigns to reach a much wider public. Information has become a far more powerful tool, and the risks of disruption are bigger than ever. More on that next time. Subscribe and hit the bell button to get a notification when a new episode is released. Hasta luego!